What is going on, guys? I'm going to give a quick update video on everything that's happened up to the dyno time and go over some of the issues we had during the dyno. Then we'll go ahead and get into clips and everything like that. When we were at the dyno itself, we recorded everything. I recorded inside the car, we recorded outside the car, showed all graphs, everything. But I didn't really like narrate everything and walk camera around. I was very concentrated and working with my tuner because he was remotely doing it and I was in the car doing the pulls and uploading tunes and adjusting everything. So fortunately everything as of right now did work out great. Everything is perfect. We have a couple little issues to work out and then we'll be ready to go hit the track and go play around town in Mexico. So quick story time. First thing that happened, my tuner hit me up and told me to go ahead and upgrade my cams if I could before dyno day. I already had BC stage 3s. He recommended me to at least get 4s. It would help move that power band up and he'd think I'd be a lot happier with it. And so I hit one of my buddies up, sold my 3s to him. So I went ahead and decided to follow it and I got some stage 4s. Now, the way I normally do this, we can normally just sneak them in right up top, just pop the valve cover off. You can just take the cam out real slowly. You just put a zip tie around up here, just keep your timing and sneak them in and out. It's real quick, takes like 10-15 minutes. Unfortunately, I was not paying attention whatsoever, and my cam gears, unlike the stock ones, they're universal, so I have like a cut on both sides of it. And so I actually got my exhaust cam 180 out. I went to go turn the motor over. I didn't like try to start it up or anything, but I did turn the motor over. It turned over really fast. I could tell there was no compression in it. So I went ahead and did a compression test, 0, checked everything. I was like, man, maybe I just let it skip a tooth on the bottom crank gear. And then I noticed it was 180 out. And so I immediately jumped in alarm mode. I thought I would have had some valve on valve contact because the valves were opening up at the same exact time to being 180 out. And so, long story short, I did a leak down test after I pulled the cams completely out of the car, rechecked timing, you know, everything. I was 100% sure I had a bent valve. That night, I ordered everything, new valves, new head gasket, you name it, just to get the car up and going and meet dyno day. That was originally scheduled with both my tuner and my local dyno. Now, this is where it gets weird. I pulled the head off that night, obviously, brought it to machine shop the next morning, gave them a heads up, everything that happened. They were willing to work with me. They called me like 2 hours later. And of course, I took the valves off here too, because I was curious and rolled them around and everything on a desk. I could not see a bend, whatsoever. And they 100% failed a leak down test with no cams even in the car. So I was completely lost. They called me, said everything looks great. We reseated all the valves. They don't know what was wrong. So, okay, I went, picked up the head. They did a leak test there where they actually put vacuum on them and everything right in front of me and everything was sealed up fine. So apparently I got lucky. I don't know why it failed the leak down test so bad, because I had the cams out of the car and cylinder 4 was actually, you could hear it hissing air, and I sprayed water on it, or like soapy water, and you could see it bubbling and everything out of that one. And that's the only one I checked. Once it failed the one, I pulled it, I started pulling everything apart. So then, next day, same day actually, I got home from work, we tore into it again. We threw everything back together with the head. I picked up another head gasket from a local friend of mine who actually had one on hand. Got everything thrown back together, fired right up, healthy as can be. Went out and test drove it the next morning before work, did a couple pulls. It was just like 100% back to normal. Another thing I thought it could have been the hydraulic lashers in the motor too. I did compress those before I put everything back together. Another good friend of mine recommended to do that. So that could have potentially been the whole problem. But it did fail the leak down test from, you know, in general. And so I pulled everything apart just to be safe. Now, as far as dyno day, first hit off the trailer. We did trailer it there just to be safe in case it came back in pieces. First hit off the trailer, it made 541 horsepower, which I will show you guys right now. Which I was feeling really good right here. I was very motivated. I was on like 28 pounds and made 541. I don't remember the torque, but which is, you know, just like 160 away from my end goal on 28 pounds. And so I was super psyched. Talked to my tuner. He said turn it up like 3 or 4 pounds on the same exact tune because it was still running pretty rich. And so I went ahead, adjusted a little bit, did another pull, and we barely climbed any. So I started talking to my tuner. You know, I was like spiking like 35 pounds and it was dropping right back down to 28 again and again and again and again. I went ahead, maxed out my boost controller all the way to 43 pounds. I'm just using boost box at this time. Maxed it out, zeroed out the spring rate and the settings, did everything potentially that I knew how to gain more boost, and I could get it to climb to about 35 pounds and it would drop immediately back down to about 28. And so, yeah, so we were kind of all stuck for a second. Excuse me, I think it was a little bit lower than 28. We did end up pulling the wastegate off. I brought another spring with me just to be prepared. I think it was a 20 and then a 10, but it really was about 28 pounds-ish, and it was opening up the gate. And so I have no idea. So we went completely on wastegate pressure. It was stuck on 28 all the way through. And so we were about to put another spring in it and just make it manually 35 to, you know, 38 pounds at the end of the tune. And one of the guys actually next door was coming over from the exhaust side of the shop and offered to just use CO2 to the top of the gate, pressurize it as much as I wanted so we could get our tune done. And he brought his tank over, we ran a line real quick. It took 2 minutes just for tune wise, and we got to hold about 35 pounds for one good pull. .710 horsepower, 640 torque, 639 torque, something like that. And we immediately called it right there. It was super happy with it. On that last pull, we did raise the rev limit to 7,500 too as well. We went ahead and left it at 7,500 and not pushed it all the way to 8,000. Just for safety reasons, and I can 100% in my tuner, you know, excuse me, on my laptop, I can change the rev limits on my own on this same tune and everything will be fine. But there really no need for it. As you guys see on the dyno graph a little bit, I was starting to lose power right there anyway, even with the ported head, big turbo, big everything. The power was falling off a bit, and the only reason I would ever want to raise that limit anymore is if I had to shift into 4th gear on like an 8th mile. If I was bouncing off rev limiter at 8th mile, I'd bump it up to like 78, 8K just so I can have a full pull without shifting at the very end of the hit. So I think 7,500 will actually get me, you know, exactly where I want it. So I guess I'm really hoping to get into 6s this summer in the 8th, and I would 100% want to go to a quarter, but I think I would get kicked out probably on the first real hit, because I think it's like 135 miles per hour. Then you got to have a cage or below like a 10.9 or something. I got to relook at it again. Also guys, we were just about to be making a video, and I did remember to, while we were doing everything, the bottom dog mount, or the dog bone mount, was completely off during the dyno session. So if you guys see the motor and stuff jumping around, that was 100% not the motor mounts. That was my fault as well.